Hello and welcome to the Unknown Film Enthusiast. Democracy dies in darkness, and today we're going to be talking about a movie. I know, right? The movie that looks into that's also their tagline, the Washington Post.
Oh.
Because today we're talking about The Post.
The Post.
So, The Post, once again, historical piece about the Washington Post investigating the Vietnam War, right?
Yes.
Okay. So let's first talk about, I would like to kind of divide this into two main sections. The movie itself, and then also talking about why this movie came out now, if we want to go down that road, all right?
Yeah.
So let's go through the movie itself,
Okay.
so that if you just want to hear about the movie, you can. If you want to hear the other side, you can as well. But
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to give away my own personal political views, but it's more just, I'll go over. Obviously, I understand why it was made, and I understand why the people who are in it, specifically Meryl Streep. She's very outspoken in One Direction, but
she likes One Direction?
Yeah. The movie itself, it's a political thriller from the brilliant mind of Steven Spielberg, who it's very odd. Like, he picked this movie, honestly, like, kind of late, because he was already working on Ready Player One, but yeah, obviously, it's kind of upsetting to other directors, if you think about that, in his spare time, Steven Spielberg can make a Best Picture nominated movie. But yeah, personally, I feel like it deserves it.
On the heels of Ready Player One.
On the heels of Ready Player One, which, we'll see if it's okay. But yeah, the movie itself, it's kind of straightforward. Like, you kind of know what you're going to get into, but it doesn't get boring or anything. Basically, the whole time, Steven Spielberg has a great ability to show characters. So even though you know the outcome, you know everything else, just seeing how everyone interacts is fantastic. And it's somewhat of a redemption because Meryl Streep inherits this from her husband, who it was left to, the Washington Post was left to her husband by her father, and then her husband passed away, so she got it by proxy. And a lot of people just looked at her as, she's the woman who owns the Post, but she has no real say. And this is the first time she has been given the question of, do I stick to my political alliances, because she was a good friend with McNamara, who was the Secretary of Defense.
Oh, okay. All right.
And do I just keep sugarcoating it and keep with the friends that I have, or do I actually publish this hard news? And that's where Tom Hanks' character is a big part of it, because he's one of the first people who's like, we need to make a push for this, because there are a lot of news sources that are getting this leaked information from a disgruntled reporter who was in parts of Vietnam just reporting it, and then he comes back home and sees that the very first thing McNamara says is, we're doing great, we're just going to send some more troops into this altercation, and never refers to it as a war, never refers to the shambles that is basically going on across the world. And he starts releasing these confidential memos, page by page, and sending them to various news sources. I believe it's the New York Times is the first one. They are the first to publish, and then they get a cease and desist from the White House saying, if you continue to post this information, you will be stopped by the Supreme Court. And basically, there's a loophole where the New York Times is the only one actually being told you have to stop. So the Post is given information from this other source, and various people throughout the Post kind of have an assumption as to who is lending out this information.
Okay, so they don't know who the leaker is either. They're just getting this information anonymously.
There's a couple people who have an inkling, and then later on in the movie they eventually they reveal who it is and like how it was figured out. But yeah, it's basically the struggles of, do we tell people the truth or do we continue doing what's comfortable? And it basically shows the breakthrough that the Washington Post did, where it went from this little, it's a local newspaper, and they published puff pieces about the White House, and like, oh, we just covered Nixon's daughter's wedding, and it's all the stuff like that, and then do we finally publish something that's maybe worthwhile? And it's a very moving movie, and just everyone involved does a great job. Steven Spielberg brought in the real heavy hitters. There's even people you wouldn't expect, like David Cross, who is a stand-up comedian, and Bob and David, who were both he's Saul in Breaking Bad. Bob Odenkirk, thank you. They're both play rather large roles in the movie. There's I believe Sarah Paulson, and there's a lot of actors that you wouldn't normally associate with a serious political movie, but they're all there, they carry it, and just everyone is so charismatic that it brings the whole movie to life. It doesn't feel like this is a movie about the news. It's about the people behind it and the importance that they feel is being brought.
Yes.
So it's just it's a very well made movie, and honestly, yeah, Steven Spielberg could make it in his sleep. And
it seems like saying Steven Spielberg can make it in his sleep might give more credit to the fact that the historical event is actually what is most intriguing, yes. And then given life to by extremely powerful, renowned actors that are really giving it their all, because they too understand the importance of what it means to be part of, the press, essentially.
Yes.
That's what this movie, from a person that I have not seen it yet, but it's one that I see as an important film because it talks about why it's important to have access to information.
Yes.
And then I think, and I don't know the true history behind like this particular event, but if it shows it, if it can show an event as it was with the lens, this is not a, when you look back at history, you are looking at history through a lens no matter what. It is impossible to be entirely objective when you look at the past. So if it gives at least some credence to these are the events that happened and we're telling this story for a reason, because it is important to have access to information, and especially the information of, the news media as well as the relationship to the government. And that sounds like what is at the core of this film is that relationship expressed by very powerful actors giving it their all.
Yeah. Very good.
I'm very excited to see it. Now, do you want to quickly delve into why this is being shown?
Yes.
All right. So, 2017, huge election.
The best. We got the best people working on it.
The best year in American history, as it'll become to be known. I mean, obviously, talking about politics is a difficult thing to do, but for a movie like this that is political and it has a greater meaning than just a movie to make money, it comes with a message, and that message seems to be trust the news in some cases.
And this movie does everything in its power to not say the words fake news, but gosh darn does it get real close.
Okay.
And just basically, you see the parallels of the censorship from the government. You see how, those are facts, but these are the facts that we want you to put out. Where it's either skirting over details that they don't want to be focused on, but basically they knew they were entering a losing war. Mm-hmm. And they had seen what had happened with France as they started losing the colony of Vietnam.
Yeah.
It's hard not to see the comparisons between the two. And you just see how the newspapers had to overcome and basically take steps to make sure that the truth was being told. No matter what the government was trying to say, they weren't giving out government secrets. They were just telling the public what they needed to know. Because people were blindly supporting something because they didn't have all the facts.
Yeah.
And whether or not that's exactly the case now, you can definitely see the parallels with it. And just bringing together such a great filmmaker with great actors and a phenomenal script is just what brings this movie to life and really makes it stand out. There's a lot of comedians doing commentary about the way news is. There's a lot of news outlets basically talking about, well, these are the lies that came out today, and these are the comparisons with this and this. It's interesting to see it almost, because they're not directly saying, this is what's going on now. They're just saying, this is what happened before. Maybe take a look at it and make sure that it doesn't happen again.
And I think, the access to information is also very different comparatively as well. Like, during the Vietnam War, you don't have all of social media. You don't have the entirety of the world's information at your fingertips. So the information that you are receiving is filtered through the news media.
Yeah.
Because that is the only way for you to access anything. And even today, I mean, and this is one conversation that I think comes up a lot, is that you have access to every single piece of information. But even then, are you reading the document, the document that these news sources are reporting on or commenting on? Do you actually read that primary source document, or do you read the commentary given to you by a person that was educated in that way about this is what this means.
Yeah.
I've looked at legal documents, no idea. I can read the English on them, but that doesn't mean that I can understand them. Coming to something like this where you had the same thing, important government documents were being released to these news outlets, and it is their job to give you the information in a meaningful way, and that meaningful way is so that you can understand it, I think. And if that's, and I know that's not necessarily the moral quandary at the heart of this film, but it is the moral quandary I think that a lot of people are having to like deal with at this time. And so the reason that this film is coming out is to say, hey, maybe trust the people that are doing the job that they have been trained and educated to do.
And not the people who will get damaged if this certain information is shown.
Exactly.
And yeah, it's an important movie at a very good time, and I'm very happy that it wasn't overlooked.
So, thinking about damage in one case, is this going to be the first movie that'll damage your ability to connect it to signs?
Well, it's funny that you ask, because it's not. If we look at the cast of this movie, we'll notice Bradley Whitford. And if you think, Bradley Whitford, who's that? Well, he was in Cabin in the Woods with Fran Kranz, I believe is his name. I don't know. Who was in The Village, directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who directed Signs? Signs Sealed Delivered. It's Signs. What are you going to post about that, Zach?
Looks like I'll have to get you next time.
All right.
Thank you all very much for listening. We'll talk to you again very soon.
Bye-bye.